Hello, pepper growers. This is Ray Kruse of the ISU Extension Outreach Office of Dubuque County. And today we're talking about weeding, mulching, and if you choose so, fertilizing your peppers. Now, since we planted our peppers, they almost look like they've kind of gone downhill. They look a little yellow, look a little stunted, they haven't put on much growth. Well, part of that is because it's been so wet out in this garden. Also, we were delayed in getting them in the ground, and we haven't had a lot of heat. But if you've paid attention to the recent forecast, that's about to change. So, with all the heat coming, this is a perfect time to get everything weeded and set up for success with the weather coming forward. Now, when we're weeding the garden here, if we look at what we have in my garden, we've got some crabgrass coming out of the ground here. We have some red pigweed there by the tip of my finger. We also have some giant ragweed, and we also have some oats that came from the lawn when we seeded that next door. Now, all of these weeds I have here, you can simply just yank them out of the ground or cut them off at the soil surface with a hoe and just leave them go. They'll dry out and they'll die. Now, there are exceptions to that rule or to that practice, and some of those weeds will actually come back. One of them is purslane, which I don't have an example to show you here today, but purslane, if left in the garden, will come back if you don't remove it completely. Some other plants that we're going to need to remove completely from the garden are a lot of our perennial weeds. This is quackgrass. If you just pull the tops off or cut it off at the soil surface here, like this green material, this root will eventually resprout a new weed. Same thing with dandelions. If you leave any part of that root in the ground, they're going to pop right back up. So it's essential that we remove the entire plant. Here's the dreaded creeping Charlie, as well as the Canadian thistle here too. You can see this thistle was cut off at the soil surface, and this is the residual root left beneath the ground, and we have another thistle. So these are some weeds that you're going to want to remove completely from the garden if you have these weeds in your garden, because they will come back throughout the summer, even if you put down mulch sometimes. Now that we have cleared our soil of weeds, we have come back and put down a thick layer of mulch around each one of our pepper plants. You don't have to do this in order to get a good pepper crop, but the advantages are so great that I recommend everyone to put this down if you have the resources to do so. The first advantage is weed suppression. This thick mat, which is about 3 inches thick of mulch, provides good shade to the soil so that the weeds aren't able to get sunlight and continue sprouting. And it limits our weeding that we have to do later in the season. Additionally, this also helps regulate the moisture in the soil around our pepper plants so that they have a more consistent moisture supply, especially when it gets so hot out. Now, what can you use for mulch? I have access to some weed-free hay here on my farm. You can use grass clippings, which I really think are the best mulch. You can also use straw, and you can also use leaves if you have some stockpiled leaves as well. The key is getting a good thick layer of mulch in the garden that completely covers the soil. Now, with this poor condition the peppers are in right now, being that they're so yellow and poor looking, you may choose to put down a fertilizer. I know that my soils here in my garden are nutrient rich enough to where I don't have to put this down. I know that they're going to snap out of this here in a few weeks. But if you choose to put down a fertilizer, I recommend something that is going light in the nitrogen and maybe a little heavier in the phosphorus, and using the lightest recommended mixing dose possible. Adding too much fertilizer can make these peppers focus on leaf growth later in the season rather than putting on the intended peppers that we're growing them for. Next time you join me, we're going to focus on trellising our peppers as long as we don't have any disease or insect infestations in between. Happy growing, everybody.